Hey guys, thanks for checking another gearbarrel.com video. Just hanging out here, talking about life and knives and, warm Florida. Hanging out with Don Lozier, one of the most published knife makers in the last 25 years or so. Blade Magazine, New York Times, all that fun stuff. Anyway, he was just sharing a story from a little while back, and I just thought, Don, it'd be cool to hear that story, get it on video. And I know I love hearing these stories about knife makers. And so anyway, what were you saying?
Yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, we were just interrupted. We started this once and was interrupted by a telephone, so we figured we'd start over again. I was talking about how I got to where I am today, and I was recalling an instance when it was a Thursday afternoon, and I was sitting in the cocktail lounge in the Crown Plaza at Times Square in the Big Apple. I was sitting around with a bunch of guys and a couple of knife makers and 3 or 4 knife dealers, and was just whiling away the time, waiting for the New York Custom Knife Show, which would be the following day, and that's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday show. And as was often the case, we were passing around knives made by various different makers and making comments about first one and then another. Someone handed me something that was kind of novel in that day and time. It was a tactical folder made by Darryl Ralph. And I looked it over, and I said, well, he's a good knife maker and obviously a talented machinist. And I made a comment about the big difference between a machinist that makes knives and a knife maker like myself is that a machinist that makes knives, he can support a family of 4. Whereas a knife maker like myself, I can make a small fortune making knives. That is, if I start out with a large fortune and just keep making knives till I have a smaller one. That's the way it works for a knife maker. But anyhow, anyhow, it was a nice piece of work, and I passed it on to somebody else. And as time went by, this Darryl Ralph guy, he concentrated on tactical folders, and I concentrated on fixed blade knives. And he became a giant in the tactical folder arena. Meanwhile, I graduated a number of times so far as fixed blade knives is concerned, and sold a lot of high-end Persian fighters and daggers in the $7,000 to $10,000 price range. And sold a lot of hunters and boot knives and things of that nature, but I stuck to fixed blade knives. But about 3 years ago, I turned my attention to the folder business, and I got my hands on some trademarked Darryl Ralph design liner lock pieces, parts, and I experimented with those, hand finished a bunch of them, learned a little bit about folders, and of course down through the years I kept in touch with Darryl Ralph, and he and I have had a great deal of respect for each other as the years went by. He respected what I was doing and vice versa. And I got to concentrating on the folder business here in the past 3 years. And now today, I guess Darryl and I are kind of knife-making comrades, so to speak, because his influence is quite obvious in my tactical designs. So just take a gander at these bad boys.
Well, these are nice, man. These are pretty cool.
Yeah, there's 3 blade designs with 2 different finishes. There's a Bowie blade pattern, there's a double ground, and then there's a Tonto, so far as blade patterns are concerned. And then there's 2 different finishes. There's either a satin finish or there's satin finish flats with an acid wash hollow grinds and bevels. So a total of 6 different knives when you consider 3 knives with 2 different finishes. it's pretty nice variety, and
Yeah.
there's quite a lot of interest in them all of a sudden.
Yeah, man, these are. I mean, I was just, you know, kind of just holding them in hand and just feeling the. You can just sense that quality and how they're. These are not production knives, you know. These are not production. I mean, once you start to get into the custom stuff, you see the fit and finish. You see how everything's kind of pulled together just beautifully and just buttery smooth. So anyway, so beautiful stuff.